Kia ora, welcome. Who are you? What do you do?
Geoff Ross and myself and my family are the owners of Lake Hāwea Station. I'm also a trustee of Pure Advantage as well.
Geoff, you've been quite open about your ambitions for Lake Hāwea Station, especially being carbon positive. Can you explain what that means?
We did start on that process, but it wasn't until we actually spoke to one of our wool buying clients, a fashion brand in the UK, that told us that fashion actually is 13% of global emissions, bigger than aviation and shipping. That fashion brand had the goal of becoming 10 times climate positive. So they needed wool for their sweaters that was also climate positive. The farm accounts for 70% of the carbon makeup of a garment. So the light went on, and we realised that if we can grow climate positive wool, we're going to be able to sell it for more. It's going to be a commercial opportunity for us, and that's what we did. So we calculated our emissions for our property. We emit 2,600 tonnes of greenhouse gases a year. It's a big number. Fortunately for us, through vegetation, through bush, through regenerating scrub and gullies and native bush, we sequester over 5,500 tonnes. So we're a little more than 2 times climate positive. So not only does that do two things, it proves that farming can actually be good for the planet in that situation. It also allows us to get a premium. And given the commodity traits of farming, and particularly in New Zealand, we see that as a way for many, not only ourselves, but many New Zealand farmers to earn much needed premiums.
So how do you demonstrate that in a really credible way to your customers?
We've counted it. We have used Toitu as a certification body, the government's auditor, I guess, on carbon. And we've updated it recently with Carbon Crop, which is the artificial intelligence side of things. So it's actually, once you've set it up, it's relatively easy to update, especially now with Carbon Crop sequestration measurement. And we simply show those numbers to our clients on the other side of the world. So if you're a fashion brand, we send that brand our numbers just like you'd send them any other kind of audited result. Yeah, they want to see them as well.
So your reward for this is through your customers and also personally.
Yes.
But do you think the government should recognise the cost through a scheme like How Waka Eka Noa?
If we are to be levied on a stock unit, we need to be rewarded for a tree, treating both sides of the ledger equally. So farmers need to be rewarded for that, absolutely, because if we're to solve the issues of climate change, not only are we going to need to look at reductions, lowering emissions, we're going to need to look at removals, pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, for two reasons. One is because that's actually going to help the current issue, but really importantly, it's going to help historical issues. So unfortunately, humans have been polluting for many decades. The problem that exists up there has got to be dealt with. We can't just turn a blind eye. So a great way of cleaning up the mess we've made of the past is through removals, through sequestration. And that's how farmers can really contribute to that. And they recognise some of that steep country, some of those south-facing slopes, some of those narrow gullies are actually of limited value for the farm. In fact, in some cases, they're often a problem to graze animals in those areas. You're better off letting them regenerate. And that's what a lot of farms have been doing over the last decade or two. And in high rainfall areas, they actually naturally regenerate, thankfully, back into native bush. First of all, we'll see some kānuka, then we'll see the odd little podocarp start to pop up, and in time they become, full forests.
Failing some sort of change to the emissions trading scheme or How Waka Eka Noa, do you support something like a biodiversity payment for landowners to plant native trees on their land?
100%. Like I'm a capitalist at heart, and the right markets create the right behaviours. I think the ETS could be modified. It's a little bit restrictive at the moment. Some of these 30-metre strips and some of the definitions could be eased up. There's also a growing voluntary carbon credit market. My son's involved in a business that is an exchange for voluntary carbon credits. It's actually huge. It's probably the emerging common currency worldwide. There's the ICVCM, the International Council of Voluntary Carbon Market, setting standards for voluntary credits worldwide. So New Zealand farmers who have planted a small stand of native could actually be selling those credits to a corporate on the other side of the world as a voluntary market. And then I think we're not far off seeing biodiversity credits as well.
You wouldn't need the government to participate in those markets because the clue is in the name, they're voluntary.
Yes, it's a growing, I'd say, sector worldwide, largely undiscovered still in New Zealand, but a lot of the international frameworks that have been set up, I think if they're adopted, or at least adopted in part by New Zealand, it will unlock a real opportunity for farmers and give balance to the he waka eke noa discussion, because at the moment we're all talking about cost. I think if we could talk about rewards, it would balance that conversation and take some of the angst away from perhaps farming in New Zealand right now.
I want you to take your farmer hat off and put on your Pure Advantage hat. What excites you about native forests and nature-based solutions?
I'll give both a practical or functional answer and both an emotive answer to that, to the reason why we're so interested in native forests. The functional reasons, and they've been much talked about: better biodiversity, better water quality, better cultural values, better recreational values, less fire risk, and more resilient to climate change. As a carbon sink, native forests also go like this, right, for a long, long time. As Pinus radiata as a carbon sink, go like this. Okay, so and at the end of this, when they've stopped sequestering, there's also massive loss of biodiversity forever. And look, on a personal note, why we're interested in native forest, I think it is part of our national identity. We've all grown up with native forests. I think it gives us a huge amount of pride to see some of those native trees. I think if we change the land use, if we change the original form of the whenua, then we go off in a direction that I don't think is true to what New Zealand is about.